Dear America, my parents don't often talk about the war. My father was just a baby when he came to you, and my mother, she was born 5 years after, living her 12 years in Thailand before her family would move to you as well. There are no stories of war they could tell, only ones they've learned in your history classes. But my uncle has a different story. He's the oldest, still in his preteens when he held my father as a baby and ran for his life. He was in his adolescence when the war happened. My uncle doesn't often tell these stories, but a heavy silence would fall when he does, and people would listen. His voice was always clear and stagnant. His voice never seemed to waver, but his eyes looked glassy. They looked outward, as remembering the bloodshed. He would tell about how they would walk along rainy paths, the storm washing down streams of blood, how they would hide under cold, dead bodies to avoid capture, and how they struggled to get past the Mekong River, being lucky enough to buy passage on a raft with the very little money they had left. We would always have to step over dead bodies, he said. There were dead people everywhere. He never seemed to be affected by these words, but his eyes told a different story. They told the story of war. You know the events of the Vietnam War. It was a story recorded in your history books, a story taught to your people about the bloodshed and tears. I know there was conflict with the war. Your people had different thoughts on the matter, whether they should send their loved ones to die to help those overseas. It's a story I know, and a story I have learned. But your story is different from mine. That's because I have learned another story. A story spoken through testament of those who have experienced it, not from your view, but that of my people, the Hmong people. The secret war is not known to many, but those who do know engrave it into their hearts and mind. The CIA hired the Hmong people to help the United States Army because of their experience with the Lao Tien topology, and thus they would become soldiers to aid your people. The Hmong troops fought bravely, protecting the US soldiers from communists, blocking the North Vietnam supply route, and rescuing falling pilots. Both Hmong and American soldiers fought like brothers on the battlefield, watching each other's backs and fighting alongside each other. It was supposed to bring hope, even if it was bloody and gruesome. But after your loss, the CIA left Laos, and that so-called brotherhood was quickly demolished. The Hmong soldiers were abandoned, and in the end suffered heavy casualties fighting in the secret war. They were left for dead. The only way they could escape was through pure perseverance, traveling through the thick jungle forest in all weather and hours, hiding under dead bodies to avoid death, and crossing the treacherous Mekong River. All of this out here in my uncle's stories, his stories of survival, my people's culture, their history, their voice. They bring in a grim reality to my birth and a harder truth that I must swallow. Their stories talk about cost, the cost it took to get here and the pain they had to endure. America, do you know this story? Sincerely, a grandchild of the Hmong.
As I mentioned before, I'm Danny. I'm 19 years old. A recent event that has changed my life in a positive way has been that I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I'm a first generation college student, and I hold that title with pride. It was a risky thing to do. I mean, I'm not the richest person in the world. In order to pay for my first semester of college, I had to sell my car. And to this day, it was such a crazy thing to do. I mean, who sells their car, especially the car that I worked so hard for to get my very first car? I sold it just for a chance to get a higher education. But I don't regret it until this day, no, because I'm so happy where I am. If you ask me where I was a year ago, I'd say I was depressed. I wasn't where I wanted to be, and honestly, I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And now I'm looking into careers I never thought was possible until I applied for college. And my plans for the future are that I really want to be, well, after I complete my 2 years here at Donnelly College, I want to transfer to a university to hopefully get a degree in criminal justice, to then go into like a law school, because my dream career is to be a criminal defensive lawyer. Because there are so many people who are wrongfully incarcerated that don't have that support to prove their innocence, and I want to be that support. I want to fight for the people who don't really have a voice. I've always loved social justice, and I feel like this is a way that I can help them out.